Now, of course, Roswell, New Mexico is home to the Alien Festival because of the Roswell UFO incident, which was admittedly an Air Force experiment to pick up Soviet nuclear activity by monitoring sound waves, but now it's been blown up into this whole thing. Well, this observatory that was evacuated is roughly 2.5 hours from Roswell by car, and it was evacuated back on September 6th. Now, the particularly interesting piece of this story is that Sherry Lifson, a spokeswoman for the Association of Universities for Research in Astronomy, said that her group was addressing a security issue and decided to vacate the facility as a precautionary measure. She also mentioned they were working with the proper authorities. Now, when I read that it was a security issue, there's a finite number of things that it could be, and we won't speculate too much on that because very few people, I'm sure, know what actually happened. But hacking is something that domestic people, but mostly foreign people or foreign nations, are attempting all the time. As some of you might have heard in the video I posted up on Saturday, a lot of these hack attempts are AI bots, and I could see a national solar observatory being made a target and then hacked because their defenses weren't sophisticated enough. And I'm no expert in how the national observatories operate their security systems, but we also can't just assume it was an AI bot. It very well could have been, or it could have been a person, or more likely a foreign organization attempting to gain control over the observatory's inner workings. But then the question is why? And perhaps it's to monitor Trump's Space Force, seeing as this article is from late July, and it says, in coming months, Defense Department leaders plan to stand up 3 of the 4 components of the new Space Force: a new combatant command for space, a new joint agency to buy satellites for the military, and a new warfighting community that draws space operators from all service branches. So this is underway now, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was a foreign nation trying to monitor the Space Force. And normally I wouldn't be speculating so much, but other than quotes and the fact that the entire small town of 12 to 15 people and the post office were evacuated too, we don't really have much more to go on besides speculation. And the other theory that I have is that the observatory is fairly close to White Sands, which is home to the White Sands Missile Range. And right in front, you'll notice Holloman Air Force Base. I'm sure that there are numerous foreign governments that would love to get a look at some of the operations at the missile range and or the Air Force Base. And it's still strange that the town was evacuated along with the post office, because you'd think that a breach of the observatory wouldn't warrant the evacuation of the whole town, which admittedly leaves these pieces a bit disconnected for me. Not to mention that there were rumors spreading that this was all because of geomagnetic storms. And that's not seeming to be the case. There isn't really anything unusual going on with the sun that we know of. And that means that the last explanation that I can think of that would be considered a security issue where the town, might have had to be evacuated is if there was an individual or a few individuals committing espionage. Of course, that's been used throughout human history to steal government and military secrets. And when the observatory has a view of White Sands and Holloman, it's hard to believe that wouldn't be a target for foreign agents. So just stay away from the sensationalist claims for this and really think about it, okay? It wasn't aliens. It's unlikely to be geomagnetic storms. And yes, there was a Black Hawk helicopter in the area, but that's not out of the ordinary. However, there have been 12 other observatories that had their live webcams go down. So this is definitely a story to keep an eye on. As the first article that I brought up had mentioned, they are going back to work this week, so whatever the threat is seemed to have either passed or been dealt with. But okay, now let's get into a story that we actually know quite a bit more about. Bob Woodward, he wrote Fear about Trump in the White House, and needless to say, there's been backlash for that. But getting beyond that book, he's not trying to make the president look good. Like, that's obvious. He's not trying to make Trump look good. So when Woodward says that he's found no collusion by Trump despite him looking for 2 years, that's not something to roll your eyes at. And Lisa Page also said that the FBI was trying to build a case of collusion against Trump, but they failed. And she also sounded oddly disappointed that there was nothing to be found relevant to the collusion narrative. Now, apparently there's a secret witness or someone's changed their testimony. But either way, Mueller's still just grasping at straws. Trump has been more investigated and had his past gone through with a fine-tooth comb more than any president in history. And we're seeing the same kind of thing with Kavanaugh. I mean, he's being mistreated and slandered more than Clarence Thomas was, and that was bad. I mean, you just figure that if there was collusion, there would be someone who would leak it. There'd be someone on the special counsel who would leak that, they've got the president now. They've got everything that they need and they're going to take him down. There would be leads that the FBI could expand on. There would be something for Woodward to say besides, "I've found no evidence of collusion," which is, of course, paraphrasing, but you get the point. Woodward would have given Hugh Hewitt every lead that he had in that interview, but there was nothing. I mean, if only all of this time and energy went into an investigation with actual leads, the time and resources would be much better spent, and we'd know far more about many dubious people. I mean, imagine if Woodward wrote a book on Hillary and he spent 2 years digging into her, or Obama, or John Kerry. I mean, if you only spent 2 years, you could write a novel. And I mean, there's a laundry list of people that you could dig into and write a book about because they're incredibly corrupt. But it's at this point that it's probably worth mentioning that between October 30th of last year and August 31st of this year, there are over 51,000 sealed indictments, and the usual number is only around 1,000 or so. I mean, I remember when that number was around 9,000, and I thought that was incredibly high, but now we're at over 51,000. So there is certainly something going on. For all of the inaction that we see, there's very clearly something going on behind the scenes. So that's all for this video. You can be sure to hear about any updates to these stories right here on the channel. So thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate all the